Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Topic Time with Harrison Young, episode number 6 in the town of Bridgewater since I moved it here. Well, we've got a little issue with the cameras, but we're doing okay. We got two people here. We got myself and my awesome guest, and I always pride myself in diversity in my guests. Since I've been here to Bridgewater, I've had an actor, a model. I had Vinny Paz on last week, the 5-time world champion boxer. I had an artist and I had a musician, and now I have one of my favorite types of genres, the author, and I use that sentence in a way that kind of doesn't clash because authors have a genre, and this gentleman here is Matt Bechtel. He has a genre. He has a bunch of books he's written, a few books, and he and another gentleman, I believe, started a publishing company called, what's it, Decon
It's
eBooks?
Nikon eBooks.
Nikon eBooks,
which was born out of the Northeastern Writers Convention, affectionately named Camp Nikon. But we can get into all of that history in a bit.
And he's going to actually do something that no guest has ever done before.
First time.
Yeah, this is great. I love it. He took a swig of bourbon before we started our show. He has it hidden behind his two books that he's got here on these stands. You might want to take another one. His girlfriend's driving him tonight, so I guess he'll be safe. But he's also going to do something like, it's so different. I love writing, and I don't know if you guys know this, but before I became the greatest TV talk show host on earth, I was a writer as well, and I still am to some extent. I wrote a book of short stories, and he's living my dream, and he's actually going to read a couple of stories from a collection of short stories he wrote, and we're going to talk about them after we do a little profiling of him, and that'll be great. But it's kind of like it's kind of cool because oftentimes I'll have a musician on in here or in my show, and they'll play a song, and we'll talk about the music and the type of song it is and the meaning behind the lyrics. And we're going to do the same thing with his book. It's almost like I'm getting stories. It's like I'm getting a bedtime story read to me. But before we do that, you just told me that how your publishing company started, and like I do with all my guests, I profile them specifically and find out how they got to where they're at now. So tell me about yourself and how you became an author. I mean, what were you like as a kid? I assume you enjoyed the written word all your life, correct?
Yes.
Because I did too.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Where'd you grow up and how did that come
I was born just south of Detroit, Michigan,
right
about there
Michigan,
on the Min, into a mostly Irish family where creativity was always so encouraged.
Cool.
Anything we did that was creative, and this is not to say, I played sports, I ran around outside, we had every Atari game known to man in the early 80s, and yet still, my older brother and my older sister and I, we were always staging plays.
Cool.
And
when you say
writing
staging plays, are these plays that you guys coagulated to create yourself?
Yes, my brother was the Pied Piper, he was the oldest, he was the playwright.
Cool.
At that time.
Yep.
But when we then, later when I was around 6, 7, we moved to New England. We moved to Connecticut.
Okay.
And that was when
the court of King Arthur.
And that was the time when VCRs were first starting to come around. So we got the first camcorder.
Okay.
And my brother would gather all the other kids in the neighborhood, and we would do a regular show called Monday Night Live, which was just like the kids in the neighborhood Saturday Night Live ripoff.
Okay. Did it give Monday Night Football good competition at the time, you think?
Well, every one of our parents always came over and watched every episode we premiered, so
cool.
we had a loyal, if not related, fan base.
This is incredible.
But it was
you were a bunch of really precocious kids. And how old were you? How many years older than your brother?
My brother's 7 years older than me, so he was 13, 14
and you
at
were
the
like
time.
6, okay.
I was 6. My sister's 2 years older than me. So
you were the baby of the family.
I was the baby of the family.
Okay,
yes.
Cool.
Yes, but
why was it? Yeah. Why did it have to be Monday nights? Why couldn't it be Saturday? Couldn't it be? Did it just have to be? It was like a Monday night ritual.
Ask my brother. He was the executive producer.
Okay. All right. We'll get him on the show and I'll ask him.
But yeah. But again, so even and I'm talking my family. I have to even go all the way back. My grandfather was a writer, and he spent 50 years working in various jobs for the Detroit News.
Wow. Cool.
So I like
He
to
was
say
a journalist, right? Or was that? Did he write fiction too, or just?
for himself mostly.
Okay.
Yes.
Was he a published author, or did he just do it? I mean, I know he was a journalist, but did he get?
I don't believe he ever had
Okay.
any fiction or poems published.
Okay, that's
but,
cool.
But still, so this is generations, and I know that I'm not saying anyone watching who's from a big Irish family,
Okay.
and probably has had experiences. I would think like me. It's one of the good stereotypes.
Absolutely.
Is the creativity and the imagination, and my parents,
When I think
God
about,
bless
when I think
them.
of an Irish author, the most prominent one that comes to mind is O. Henry. I mean,
One of the great
master
short-
of the master
one
of the
of the
twisted, ironic ending. of the
greatest short story writers.
Absolutely.
Ever, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yep. Did you? I mean, well, I'm bringing this up because I'm wondering if any of these guys or women inspired you at all, and if any or not.
Certainly. I mean, and not just Irish. I would absolutely
All right.
put O. Henry.
O. Henry, yeah.
Is one of my major influences. Ernest Hemingway.
There you go.
Is another.
I've read plenty of his stuff. It's incredible writing.
We'll cycle back around to this
Yep.
again, but Ernest Hemingway was the favorite of Bob Booth,
Yep.
who was my mentor, who founded both the Nikon Convention and the Nikon eBooks Digital Publishing Company.
Cool.
So that was something that he and I bonded over almost immediately when we met
How
years
long ago
back.
was that?
We met exactly, just about exactly, yeah. It was fall of 1996,
Oh, 21 years ago.
and
wow.
it was the greatest job interview I've ever had.
Okay.
Because I was an undergraduate at Providence College.
Cool.
And when I was
What
in
was your major? Was your major in literature there?
English, yes.
English, okay.
Yes. English with a theater minor.
Got it.
Because I'm a ham.
Cool.
And I like being
I
on
can see
stage.
that.
So when I was in high school, I thought I would probably follow in my grandfather's footsteps and said, well, I want to write. So what's the best way to have a career as a writer? Go into journalism.
Cool.
So I joined the high school newspaper, and 1 year of that made me realize, nope, that is not me. That is not what I want to do.
Okay.
But the high school newspaper staff also had to do the layout of the paper,
Wow.
which all the way back
What
in the
high school is
mid-90s.
this you went to?
New Canaan High School in New Canaan, Connecticut.
I know.
Yes. Yes,
Unfortunately, there was a famous murder there. They made a film about. But that had nothing to do with you.
I swear I wasn't involved.
I know you weren't even there yet. Then were you? It was 1973. So I'm guessing you.
My lawyer advises me not to speak on the matter.
Okay, we'll
So-
drop it right now. Cool.
So I learned the page layout software called PageMaker,
Okay.
which, yes, everyone who's in graphic design is laughing right now at PageMaker. Hey, that's what was what in '94.
Okay.
So I went to college, and there's a fine arts requirement, and
Yep.
I'm very creative. I love writing, I love acting, I love performing. I can't draw for squat.
Me either.
So, but there was a class in PageMaker.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, easy grade. I already know it. So I took it.
PageMaker sounds almost like
And I did
graphic
well.
art.
It's page layout. It's the text goes here, the pictures go here. It's for
Well, yeah, but you don't actually draw them. You just put them together.
No,
Right.
yes.
Well, it's not as difficult as drawing them.
no, it's not.
But it's like it sounds like kind of like journal editing or magazine
That's
editing.
exactly what
Right,
it is.
okay.
So skipping ahead, I did well in the class, and the
Right.
professor said, "Hey, if you're looking for an on-campus job, there's this office that needs undergrads who know how to do PageMaker."
Cool.
And so, first day of classes, my sophomore year,
Yep.
I went to this office that he told me to go, and I walked in, and the office is completely empty, except there was a man and a woman in one of the back offices just talking.
Yep.
And I wandered back, and I said, "Hello, Richard Elkington told me to stop by and ask about employment. He said you might be looking for undergraduates who know PageMaker." And the man and the woman looked at each other, and the man looked at me and said, "You know PageMaker?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He said, "You're hired. What's
Okay.
your name?" Their entire staff had graduated. They had no undergraduate. And that man was Bob Booth. And Bob was, his day job was the production manager of the publication center at Providence College, but he was always a writer and a dreamer, and he was the founder of Camp Nikon, the Northeastern Writers Convention.
Okay.
And as he and I
Where
bonded,
was the location of this place?
a Nikon is held at Roger Williams University every summer.
Okay, that's another college in Rhode Island.
Yes, Bristol, Rhode Island.
Yes.
And
My
about
brother
it,
went there now that I think
so-
of it. Okay, go on.
so it didn't take long for Bob and I to become like this.
Cool.
And about a year into me working for him, he came to my desk in the office one day,
Yep.
and he's like, "Stop working. I got something I want to show you." And he pulls out this photo album. And it's all these photos from what would be at the time the first 17 years of Nikon. And he starts going through the pictures. He's like, that's Charles L. Grant. He's a best-selling author. All he does is write. That's Rick Houdala. All he does is write. That's Ginger Buchanan. All she does is run Penguin Publishing.
Penguin Publishing?
Yes.
That's like one of the biggest publishers in the world.
Yes.
It's not the biggest.
Yes.
So it's one of them. Not Court and Braces too, but one of those league.
Over and over again. All he does is write. All she does is write. All she does is cover art for books. And he looked at me and he said, I know you want to be a writer. Never let anyone tell you you can't do it.
Beautiful.
And he said, I've never brought he called all of us undergrads his kids. He said, I've never brought one of my kids to Nikon, but I'm going to bring you this summer.
Meaning you?
Meaning me.
Sure.
And
Terrific.
That was Nikon 18. And this year I celebrated my 20th summer at Nikon. I have never missed since, and I am now part of running the convention and running the publishing company that grew out of it. To say that my life would be far different had I not wandered into that office in September 1996
Wow.
is probably the understatement of the century.
That is awesome. All right. Well, you know what? You told me something that I really got me thinking, got my juices flowing, my literary juices flowing. You said you've got some books here, and we're going to discuss them. But you also said, like, you wrote a collection of short stories.
Yes.
And the genre was kind of like dark humor. And
It's dark humor, satire.
That's my favorite.
It is. Yep. It is right here. It is called.
What I want to ask you to do now is to open one of those books and read a story.
I would love to.
Like I'm an anxious child whose parents wanted to go to bed, so I say, you read me a nice bedtime story and I'll do it. So that's
This
what I'm
isn't
saying to you,
gonna-
except I won't go to bed.
And that's good because this isn't going to be a nice bedtime story.
That's cool.
Okay,
That's fine.
so yes, this is my first original collection. Monochromes and Other Stories came out this spring. It was published by Haverhill House Publishing,
Cool.
which is a new independent small press.
In Haverhill, Mass.
Based out of Haverhill, Massachusetts. The owner and editor-in-chief and publisher is an author named John M. McIlvaine.
Cool.
Who, of course, I met at Nikon.
There you go.
I promised you before we started filming, I'd tell you the story of how I was signed by Haverhill Press to do this collection. 10 years ago, John was editing an anthology of dark humor stories.
Cool.
And it was I submitted and he bought my story. It was my first professional sale.
Wow.
And due to circumstances beyond anyone else's control, the anthology never saw the light of day. The project got scrapped towards the end of it. It was never published.
Sometimes that happens, but
These things
everything happens
happen.
for a reason. I always say that.
So fast forward about a decade later,
Yep.
John calls me one day and he's like, yeah, I've decided I'm founding my own publishing company,
Wow.
Haverhill Press. And I remember because I didn't just send him that one story. I sent him a couple to choose from.
Right.
And he said, I've known for 10 years, I've been wanting to work with you again.
Okay.
And I said, that's amazing. What story do you want? And he said, all of them.
Whoa.
And I said, well, okay.
It's like that feeling, only better. You see that car commercial? Yeah.
Oh yes,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was. And so a few months later, after the work of tremendous people who are involved at Haverhill Press, writing can be very solitary. Writing can be very lonely.
I'm a writer too.
Publishing is collaborative.
Right.
Because this book would not exist without John McIlvaine,
There you go.
without the amazing cover artist Dyer Wilk,
Okay.
without my first beta reader Diane Buja, without the amazing proofreader Marianne Halbert. I want to give all those people who are involved in this a shout out because they're my stories, but they're my stories, but this book is all of ours and would not be here without everyone. So enough further ado. So the other reason I told that story is I figure it would only be appropriate to read the story that John originally bought 10 years ago.
From you.
From me.
Let's do it.
Yes, because it is in here.
Name the title, read it, and we'll discuss it afterwards.
The title.
Be a captive audience and enjoy it.
Now
Sure will.
they won't let you leave, so you got to be captive.
You listen too, folks. 'Cause this is good stuff. It's great stuff. Okay.
Okay, this story is called TeleServe.
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 Serve.
TeleServe.
TeleServe.
SERV.
Got it.
Yes, TeleServe. Welcome to TeleServe, the state's unemployment benefits payment by telephone service. To use this system in English, please press 1. Boop. To ensure payment is mailed correctly, we'll need to verify your address. Does the state have your current address? If so, press 1. Boop. The state employment security law provides penalty for giving false information in order to receive unemployment benefits or for failing to provide information in order to receive benefits. Please enter your social security number now. Beep, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, 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 boop. Please enter your BYE code now. The BYE code is the 2-digit code found next to your social security number at the top of the TeleServe notice form we mailed to you. Enter your BYE code now. Boop, boop. Please hold for a moment while we check for your claims record. Please enter your personally chosen 4-digit PIN identification number now. Beep, boop, boop, beep. Thank you. You must listen to each question in its entirety before answering. Press 1 to answer yes, or press 2 to answer no. The question will repeat if interrupted. To begin, please press 1 now. Boop. Are you claiming benefits for last week? Boop. Were you able and available for full-time work last week? Boop. Did you look for full-time work last week? Boop. Did you return to full-time work last week? Beep. Did you refuse any work offered to you last week? Beep. Did you work part-time, earn or receive any vacation pay, bonus pay, or wages last week? Beep. Did you apply for or receive any Social Security or private pension last week? Beep. Did you apply for or receive any workers' compensation, TDI, sick pay, or disability last week? Beep. It's 2:37 p.m. on a Wednesday. Did you just wake up? Boop. You stayed up all night drinking again, didn't you? Boop. Do you have any idea what you're going to do with yourself when your unemployment benefits run out in a month and a half? Beep. You'll probably wind up crawling back to your parents with your tail between your legs, won't you? Beep. Again, the state employment security law provides penalty for giving false information over the TeleServe system. Are you sure you won't be moving back in with your parents? Beep. That's what I thought. Are you going to get drunk again tonight? Boop. And the night after that? Boop. Do you even remember the last night you didn't drink? Beep. Do you remember the last night you slept well? Beep. It's starting to get to you, isn't it? Boop. Are there dishes piled in your sink, dirty laundry all over your floor, and frozen food boxes overflowing from your garbage can? Boop. You're so predictable. Have you even showered in the last couple of days? Beep. But you can't break out of it, can you? If you need more time to answer, press the star key. Otherwise, press 1 to answer yes, or press 2 to answer no. You can't break out of it, can you? Beep. Have you thought about beep? Have you thought about beep? You must listen to each question in its entirety before answering. The question will repeat if interrupted. Have you thought about beep? Have you thought about beep? You must listen to each question in its entirety before answering. The question will repeat if interrupted. Have you thought about beep? Have you thought about killing yourself? Beep. Again, the state employment security law provides penalty for giving false information over the TeleServe system. Don't lie. Have you thought about killing yourself? Boop. Have you thought about how you do it? Boop. You're going to overdose on pills, aren't you? Boop. Figures. Of course a milquetoast like you would use pills. A real man would blow his own head off. Have you ever even shot a gun? Beep. You know what your problem is? Boop. You're a wimp, aren't you? Boop. You just can't take one on the chin. You lose one lousy job and you crawl inside a bottle and inside your own head, don't you? Boop. And you've crawled so far deep inside that you can't pull yourself out. Isn't that right? Boop. It's 2:37 p.m. on a Wednesday. Is this the only conversation you've had all week? Boop. Thank you. Your request for payment has been accepted. This guarantees your payment will be mailed to you automatically. Please do not call the call center to verify payment. Thank you for using the TeleServe system. Goodbye.
All right. That's pretty good. You cover the gamut of the typical, well, as Howie Carr would say, moonbat existence.
Well, I will openly admit I have collected unemployment benefits actually a couple of times in my life, and the first 7 questions are word for word transcribed
I see,
from
yeah.
what that
TeleServe
sounded like.
Do they actually tell you that there's a penalty for
penalty for lying,
Yeah.
and you have to let the question, you can't interrupt the question or it will repeat.
Okay.
All of that was 100% verbatim. Fortunately, everything after it's 2:37 p.m. on a Wednesday came from in here.
Yeah, it was very clever. Very clever. Okay.
Yeah, I won't lie. I was inspired by when I was doing it. I was always afraid. What if they start asking more questions? I was like, what's gonna, what if all of a sudden there's something you're not expecting after question number 7? And
I know,
that's the fun part about being a writer. You can take a
You take an
totally
idea and you can
paranoid,
smush it around like silly putty.
a ridiculous idea that's scaring you for no good reason,
Right.
and you can scare other people with it instead.
sure.
So
Yeah, that suicide thing, that was something that I bet a lot of people might be in that boat. They might say, yeah, I'm considering it, but I want to do it. But the challenge to you, do it in a less wimpy way, in a more forceful way, is pretty incredible. I mean, that's
well,
wild.
in that story in particular, when I first came up with the idea,
Yeah.
I actually thought, okay, it's just a gimmick story because there's no dialogue. It's the voice of the phone
And the beep
and the beep and the
cool,
boop.
yeah.
And I was like, so at first I was just like, well, it's a
They were all yes and
flashy,
no
it's a cool
answers,
gimmick. They're all yes and no answers. But then as I actually got into writing it, and frankly had the voice really start torturing
Yeah.
the guy, the caller,
listening, yeah.
I like to think it grew into more than just a beep boop gimmick. I like to think that I think it works better than just a
No, it's perfect. It's
Just
it's
a
very,
unique
yeah, very,
type of level there.
You create the scenario beautifully.
Thank
You set the tone and then you run with it.
Thank you.
That's pretty
Thank
cool.
you very much.
So these stories and these other books you
Mm-hmm.
have here, you wrote them all, right?
No, okay. Yeah, I wrote all the stories in Monochromes.
Okay.
Monochromes and Other Stories is my first collection.
Okay.
And at the end we can talk a bit about what I'm working on now and
Right.
what I'll be going forward with. As I mentioned, Bob Booth started NECON, the Northeastern Writers Convention, in 1980.
Yeah.
This summer
That
will
long
be
ago, wow.
this summer will be NECON 38.
Yeah.
Quick plug, it is always the third weekend in July. It's this year or next year.
Yeah,
it'll be
remember, it's
Thursday.
still
It'll be
fall
Thursday.
now, so,
Thursday, July 19th through Sunday the 22nd, 2018.
Okay.
We have a tremendous dais of guests of honor lined up. Sarah Pinborough is flying over from England.
Wow.
She's a tremendous horror writer. We have David Wellington and Dana Cameron as
Okay.
the other 2 writer guests of honors.
Yep.
Jason Eckhart, who is actually local to Providence, is our artist guest of honor.
Cool.
Writer Eric Nunnally is our Toastmaster, and hold that thought because you'll hear that name again in a second.
Cool.
And our 2 official recognized legends are, and I really love this. This could not be, the legend is, it's a recognition from NECON of, like, to borrow from Oliver, you're part of the furniture.
Yep.
You are so part of the fabric of the con, and of NECON calls themselves the NECON family, and it's not a platitude.
Cool.
And our 2 legends this year couldn't be more different because the first legend is Brian Keene, who is
Okay.
one of the biggest authors in speculative fiction, and he is just, again, hold that thought. You'll hear his name again in the same reason as Eric's. But he's been guest of honor before.
Okay.
He's just a stalwart and a staple of the speculative fiction community. Our other legend is a woman named Carol Whitney, who is
Okay.
not a writer. She is not an artist. She is a fan, and she has been coming to NECON for over 30 years.
Wow.
And she has volunteered at every NECON. She helps run and organize the panel discussions.
Okay.
She is, again, just there wouldn't be NECON without Carol there in her seat in the front row at the panels every day. You always,
She's like
you
a
always know.
groupie.
I wouldn't go that far, but she's just so it's. I really like the fact we're getting to recognize NECONers on both ends of the spectrum, from the headliners who help bring other people there
Okay.
to the people who make the community what it is.
That's awesome. Okay.
So Nikon, back in 2010, when Bob was still alive, we lost Bob Booth fall of 2013.
Yep.
We founded a digital publishing company, Nikon eBooks.
Yep.
And cards on the table here. It's been tough the past few years since his passing.
Wow.
But we're persisting with the company, and just this summer, Bob had always wanted to do a charity anthology and donate all the funds to the Jimmy Fund and Dana-Farber Cancer. And I'm assuming anyone watching in New England, I don't have to explain what the Jimmy Fund and what Dana-Farber is.
Right. That's it.
Is that everybody knows what that is?
Yeah.
Cool. So. So this summer we brought out in both digital and paperback edition this anthology, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. It was edited by longtime Nikoners P.D. Kasich and Laura J. Hickman. And the table of contents of this anthology reads like a who's who. And it was only open to authors who go or have attended Nikon. But I mentioned this year's Toastmaster Eric Nunnally and one of this year's legends, Brian Keene. There are also stories. There's an introduction by New York Times bestseller Christopher Golden.
Okay.
There are stories by James A. Moore, Bracken McLeod, Matthew Costello, Thomas Tessier, Jack Ketchum. There's a reprint from Charles L. Grant, who I mentioned earlier, who was he's like the godfather of all. He passed away over a decade ago, but he was his widow allowed us to choose any one of his stories to include. Okay. So again, this is available exclusively on Amazon.com. Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. It's an amazing anthology, but it's also for an amazing cause. Okay. So if you want, it is horror bedtime stories. Okay. That's what you were asking for, a bedtime story earlier. Shameless plug. Buy the book. You'll get about 35 of them. That's perfect. And you'll do really well for us, too.
It's awesome. Well, you were a great guest. We got to wrap it up.
Okay. I don't suppose there's any chance I could sneak in one more short story, is there?
Oh, no, I'm afraid not. It was a great story, but thanks anyway.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right, well, here we go.
And hey, you called for the shot of whiskey. This is
we're going to wrap up with the song, and he'll do the shot.
Yep, because this is Maker's Mark. This is Bob Booth's drink of choice. Okay, so to Bob, to Nikon, and Harrison, to you, thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. All right, here we go. Much more episodes.